Yamamalia, hello friends, and thank you for this invitation to kick off Australia Reads Volume Symposium. I'm in the offices of my publisher Hachette in downtown Sydney, which is of course Gadigal land, home of the grass tree. These offices rise from the edge of Sydney Harbour, and the strengthening Gadigal sunshine reflects off the water surface and spreads warmth to all those who cluster at her edges. The spirit of Gadigal is as strong as it always has been, and particularly evident here on the 17th floor of this Kent Street building. From here I can see sandstone, fig, salt and inlet coil in ageless embrace with the concrete, steel and glass trees that rise from its soil today. I have much to thank Gadigal for. Many of the joys of my life, in fact, have roots of beginnings here. I was born in Gadigal, as was my son, as was my book, as are most of the songs, compositions, poems, speeches, stories, and reflections I write and share and sing. Gadigal has played a central role in the guiding and strengthening of my cultural, creative and professional spirit. So, Giranga Gadigal la Wingalu Wingalana Marangang Willing Elena Miranda Undingile Maru Balabadangana Burin Balangana Nguwalenga Yanelanda Dawundang Inunda Winning Elena Ngay Yalagirma winning a Gadigal Dain Galangangu Wale Baganale Buddha Gagiga Wale Baganale Buddha Gagiga Winning Elena Then Gadigal winning Elena Down Elena Wale Gadigal winning Elena Bawali one gun Gadigal down Uring Gadigal Yugul Gaba Winning Elena Bagay, Gadigal into the always. Singing and speaking Gadigal. This country was the teacher and author of a foundational text in my early artistic and cultural development. It was a work I read and returned to daily. Each reading provided new discoveries. And this, I think, is the way with the works we love, works that shape us, that speak our own intimate language, that have a profound effect on how we perceive our place in the world. The text was an encyclopedia, but rather than take it off the shelves, I walked its pages. In the mid-90s, I was enrolled at Sydney University. Walking the campus and scurrying to lectures, I felt like a black ant, dwarfed by buildings and knowledges and people too big, too foreign, too frightening to me. Thinking back on my time at university, I remember feeling mostly alone and confused. So, this little black ant, instead of chucking a left into campus from my walk up King Street, went straight past those big sandstone gates. I kept down City Road, hooked onto Broadway, then continued all the way down George Street to Circular Quay. Back then, I was running away. Now I know I was also being called to the edges of Gadigal. Each lecture and tute I skipped in Carr's Law or the Quad, I deferred to my new classroom. I began spending long, slow time listening as a lip of water unfurled herself into me. I came to see for the first time the deep orange sand of the eastern edge of Bennelong Point. It was visible only at low tide, and most times covered by swirling, deep green seaweed. This tiny beach winked at me one day as I was ambling along the shoreline. "Aha! This lost little Yuwaalaraay won't have seen us," it most likely said. "Well, now she's here, she better learn something." And teach, instruct, guide, challenge me she did. Gadigal showed me herself in the curves of her shoreline. Not the one everyone else could see, the one marked by a dirtying disc trampled into the brick and pebble creek forecourt. This slither of sand was truth. It was also a literary masterpiece. It instructed me in ways people and institutions and knowledges weren't at that time. It was open, fluid, relational, a stretch of sand that was hand and warm, brave, beating heart. That beach was the beginning of a gentle recalibration for me. It guided me in self-directed study and encouraged me in a supplementary practicum to the units of history and anthropology, archaeology and Aboriginal studies I strode so fervently from. Perhaps Gadigal knew I was seeking knowledge, but in places and ways wrong for me. So she allowed me to open and access her text. She instructed me in linguistics. Bennelong Point was reframed in rolling rhythms and gentle consonants, Gadigal. It was a linguistic recitation accompanied by the breaking of wave onto shore. Language impacting place rather than extricating it for the sake of a page. Gadigal, Warrain, Talawalada, Tara to my left, Waganmagali, Yurong, Kukaroo to my right, just offshore, Madawanyi. Gadigal held her lingo lessons amongst the waves and tides. Geography followed. Gadigal, rather than the site of an international tourist mecca, that is the Sydney Opera House, was a tidal island perched atop a significant shell mound. This mound, a midden, consisted of rock and mud oyster, cockle, pipi and whelk, and perhaps was the midden created by generations of ceremonies on Waganmagali, known now as Farm Cove in the Sydney Royal Botanic Gardens. The joy that midden island gave me, the images I conjured, the thoughts and ideas, the scenes and songs I floated amongst. It was a glorious learning, creative and alive. But within this knowing, I was also asked to hold on to sorrow. It seeped through my salt-encrusted pores at the discovery that the midden's remnants now bind the sandstone slabs of the colony's oldest rooms. History spread its soft bubbling foam with the introduction of Bennelong. This Wongal man unfurled in full, vivid contradiction over time. As through him, his life and his relationships, I was led into further complexity, into the world of his wife, Barangaroo, a Camaragal matriarch of national significance. Let me pause here to note the prowess of my teacher and the mastery of her text. Gadigal was instructing me, a freshwater Yuwaalaraay girl, through the knowledges of Camaragal woman and Wongal man. Gadigal, a benevolent, generous facilitator, not only uplifted the stories of occupants born on, but not to her. She wove them together in those long full days by the harbour. And that weaving is alive today. It entangles itself into the fabric of this very building. The story I'm currently writing, that will be published by the people working here, will honour, will kiss the crown of Barangaroo and Bennelong's only child together, Dilbong, the bellbird. Gadigal, through such outdoor masterclasses, has bound student to subject, made pasts, futures. She has fused knowledges and knowings so that we, mere visitors, are now invested in each other's storying. Waggan-Magalli, Bennelong Point, Bennelong, Barangaroo. This was only one unit of study in the masterclass of Gadigal country. More sites with their histories and peoples followed to shape my knowledge landscape during that time. The Rocks, Tank Stream, Wynyard Park, Bridge Street, the Conservatorium, each was a chapter in the great encyclopedia of Gadigal. My learning was extensive, durational. Only now, long years after those salt sand lessons, do I fully comprehend the waters I waded in. Gadigal was my teacher, country her text. My lesson was learning to read. Late last year, I was shown a tree by a cousin of mine. It's a slender bimble box that stands 3 or so metres from the edge of a road, northwest of the township of Lightning Ridge. This tree has no living branches or leaves cascading from its reaches, but carved into its trunk is a large scar. This marking is elongated and seriously old. The curve of its regrowth thickened with time. The scar is the length of a person. Unusual, as many of the similar trees we are fortunate to still have in Yuwaalaraay mostly bear scars the size of a handheld dish. Kaz encouraged me to spend time with the tree, so I scampered amongst the burrs and scratchy grasses at its base, picking up shards of broken glass and flattened rusted cans nearby. A scattering of outmans rose across the ironstone ridge, and skeleton trunks of cypress pine punctured the scrub at the tree's sides. Cuzzo's frustration at seeing me look anywhere but the place he suggested probably led him to say, "Important tree, this one." I stopped my scrambling and looked at him. "Points to a place over there." I realised then that the tree had a definite bend, slender as a woman's arm, her wrist gesturing northwest, across the road and into the property on the other side. I am currently enrolled in this tree's course. She's providing me readings and assessments, as are her sisters, the ones she points to, in their classroom along the river's edge. This water is not salt. Its banks are neither beach or sandstone. The Narran is fresh water. It is the colour of sweet, milky tea, and her edges are muddy. There are no breaking waves or boats or crowds on promenades, but that's okay. I know what to do. I know how to read and how to listen deeply. I've studied this way, been this before. We Yuwaalaraay are an oral people, and our language has no word for reading. This does not mean we did not do it. We have continually read, and for a period that far predates the invention of the printing press. We read country, read seasons, read tracks, read winds, We read relationships and middens. We read maps made by stars and trade routes and fires. We read trees. Funny that, considering where books come from. And our reading is not done by eyes alone. It engages the entirety of our bodies, our spirit, our self, and our mind. Our reading is communion. It is active and deep in listening and exchange. Our foundational manuscripts deal mostly in subtext, metaphor, imagery, nuance, and simile. The recitation of knowledge from our reading material spans landscapes, is sung in songs hundreds of verses long. Our reading is danced for days. While Australia reads, Black Australia sees. The Australian landscape is literature. Of course, it is storied, bursting with oral and obligational animation. Australia's First Nations are this country's original and most experienced storytellers and its first readers. Masterpieces of narrative and poetry, fiction and non, are written in and read from the land. These are studied by spirit and ear rather than eyes and mind. This entire continent is library, text, educator, and artist. Gadigal showed me this some 30 years ago. It schooled me in the great joy of reading. Her works made me listen to the unfolding narrative before me, yes, but also to the unknown, undiscovered parts of myself embedded on her page. Gadigal demanded I engage with spaces between information as well as information itself. Country has shown me it's not enough to read. You must allow stories to enter you and swallow you up. It is wondrous to me that through the words of another's story or the curve of another's place, you can find the narrative of self, parts of you didn't even know were missing or that are waiting and yet to be born. Before the Mimi descended from celestial Yuwaalaraay to shape our 4 clan lands here on earth, great Creator gathered them. Everything you make, grandmothers, Baayami said to them, must have a story. And so they began, the grandmothers of Yuwaalaraay, descending to create the Yuwaalaraay on earth. They made Kurrajong, orchid, lignum, and swamp countries, made all their associated totems and meats, and created the natural frameworks to support them, each element holding, caressing a storied centre. Everything they touched cradled it. It is with a great sense of honour and responsibility that I dedicate my life to reading Mimi's stories. I look forward to it. It has already given me great pleasure and insight. It has already inspired more story in music, song and prose. The true joy of this endeavour, however, will be in the communion with homelands and her slow, silent revelations of who I am and how I am asked to be. Gadigal, thank you.